Yeah.
All right now. Make sure the sound is good, brother.
I have to tell them so they'll, understand why.
And I believe we are live.
So is that
Where we hang out.
Yeah, that's where we hang out at.
Leisure.
Yeah, this is it, sister. This is it. This is the place. Islam.
The Ella beautiful, how are you? I know.
Thank you, Brother Richard, for sitting down once again for Behind the Final Call cover story. I'm going to check our audio before we get into this because you'll be kind of upset with me if I ain't got it right.
I would.
So it looks like we're good. Thank you once again for sitting down for Behind the Final Call cover story. We missed last week. Things are, it's my fault, I'll take it, but hey, it's because of the work. And sometimes we got to prioritize things as always. But thank you for sitting down once again. This is volume number 39, number 7 of the Final Call newspaper. The date on the paper is November 26, 2019. The title of the paper cover story is A Nation on Edge. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Richard.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Why this cover story?
Well, I think that we are seeing the country with the impeachment hearings for Mr. Trump, which were last week, and today is November 19th. There's some hearings that are going on today. This is really turning into, I think, a very serious issue for the country and where America is headed. You have a president who is accused of trying to manipulate foreign policy for his own personal political benefit. So, of course, we know the fundamental question is, or the fundamental charge is Mr. Trump blackmailing the Ukrainian government, wanting them to do an investigation into the son of Joe Biden, who is one of the Democratic candidates for president, who, if he is selected, would run against Mr. Trump, right? So that's a pretty harsh charge, and a pretty serious charge. And it gets into questions of what's happening with foreign policy. And so now you have these hearings on Capitol Hill, right? The partisanship and the divide between the Republicans and the Democrats is growing. But the language, if you listen, is very, very harsh, very, very divisive. It's beyond the word that they use, which is highly partisan. I mean, there seems to be no agreement on what the national interest is, right? Both parties seem to be committed to asserting their political interests. So the Democrats are determined to do what they feel is hold President Trump accountable for what they see as his wrongs. The Republicans apparently are determined to support Mr. Trump regardless of the charges. So there's no meeting of the minds. There's really no search for objective truth that could serve the best interests of the country. So very dangerous. The country's already been divided. Mr. Trump is as opposed to any type of reconciliation, he is calling on people to choose sides. He's calling those who testify traitors and all kinds of names that inflame passion. So it's a really heavy thing, and we should read this article. And there's a related article by the minister, Is America Headed for Civil War? Where he, again, this is a reprint of an article that he wrote some time ago, but to show you the timeliness of the divine word, those points that he made then are very relevant now. So where's America headed? We know the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about the coming destruction and fall of this country, which he said would come from inside. He said that no external force would take America, but an internal rot would. And so I think that's what we're seeing. So this article is the cover story is by our senior editor, Askia Muhammad, out of Washington, D.C. The minister's article, of course, is on page 20. But check it out. Stay tuned. Don't be misled. by the Real Housewives of Atlanta and hip hop and 50 Cent's battle with the sister over her edges and all of that. Stay tuned to what's going on. So even if you get some of the foolishness, right, and entertainment, get a balanced media meal and try to stay in touch as best you can with what's happening in the world, but follow the final call for not just reporting, but hopefully we give you some insight into what's going on.
Thank you. And of course, you can get a digital subscription to the Final Call newspaper, which I was listening to. Yes, I said listening to the digital edition on our way over.
And it sounded good.
And you gotta like that.
Yeah, it sounded more like a radio broadcast. It
So-
didn't sound metallic, and robotic. It was good.
So get your digital edition. Of course, support the brothers in the community when you see them out. It definitely goes for a good cause, and that good cause is building a nation, but also being able to produce a quality paper and provide you quality news. Of course, we want to always keep abreast on what's going on in the media and what's going on in the world. And yes, we addressed one of the big topics that we see in the news cycle right now, dealing with Trump. But also, there's a lot of discussion going on right now about a movie that's out, which I know I'm like the only black person. Don't take my card away. That hasn't seen it yet. I'm probably going to make it out to see it today. But that is the movie Harriet. And unfortunately, there's divided opinions surrounding this movie.
Well, you can read the article to I'm not going to talk about all or cover everything, because there's an article and then there's an editorial as well. So of course this is the movie by Kasi Lemmons about who's the director, one of the writers who's black. There's another brother who kind of wrote the script with her. Well, they basically rewrote kind of an existing script. I've actually seen the movie twice. I think it's a very great dramatization. It is not a documentary. We should be clear on that. Just like the movies about Dr. King were not documentaries, they were dramatizations. Just like in the movie Malcolm X, it was a dramatization. There was never a character named Bates in that movie who introduced Malcolm to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he was in prison. It was his brother. So directors and writers take different liberties creatively to try to build a story and to make it interesting. So this has been what some critics have said, historical inaccuracies. But I think the question is, how long has it been since we've seen a movie where a black woman was pictured as a heroine, as a strong, fierce advocate for her people? There was no nudity in this movie, right? There was no parading of black women bare-breasted across the screen. There was little of the outright brutality of slavery. There was references to it, signs of it, a couple incidents, but in my view, at its core, it's a very heroic film. I got to deal with this part. One of the things, this is a spoiler alert, so if you don't want to know how it works out, don't listen, but come back and listen later. But one of the most controversial things is this in the movie, there's a fictitious depiction of a black slave catcher who goes by the name of Bigger Long, right? And he is first of all, he doesn't get a great amount of screen time. He doesn't. But he's a foil. And when I listened to an interview by the director on a different news outlet, she said she wanted to show kind of the diversity, in some ways, the complexity of black life at the time. Showing the slaves, showing the free blacks as Harriet goes to Philadelphia and ultimately goes to Canada, showing the enslaved blacks, and then showing that there were, at times, blacks that were acted as slave catchers. Because a lot of times they were able to lure and infiltrate to get the enslaved back into captivity. You think about it today, unfortunately, with sex trafficking. Very often, it is women that are used to lure other women, right? So anyway, but this fictitious character kind of corners Harriet at a particular time in the movie. She fires her gun at him. He pulls his weapon and goes to fire at her and threatens to kill her. And the slave master who's riding behind him kills the race trader, kills the black slave catcher. And then the white slave master says, "I told you bring her alive." Then the scene shifts. Harriet runs, is able to reload her gun, and shoots the slave master as he tries to shoot her. Takes his horse, makes him kneel down in the dirt, and ultimately, in this leaving him in this humiliated state, she rides off. Right. So there's no white savior in this. There's nobody who is essential, and without that person, Harriet couldn't make it. Matter of fact, her first journey to freedom, she goes by herself with nobody, and she makes it, and it's really an incredible journey. So I think it's important that people see the movie for themselves. Don't take my word for it. You see it and see what you think. But there's a great amount of solidarity. I think the other thing, and this is one of the things that the director said in this other interview that I thought was very true. Let me put it this way. After slavery in particular ended, after the Civil War in particular, there was a desire for the North and the South to reunite. Remember, the Civil War was one of the bloodiest, costliest wars in American history, right? Not only did the South want relief, but the Northerners wanted to give relief. They wanted to heal their country. So part of what happened was not only political accommodations that ended things like Reconstruction and this deal that ended Reconstruction and opened the way for blacks to be driven out of office in the South with the removal of federal troops and the institution of black codes and Jim Crow and segregation. Not only did that happen, but part of making that happen was changing the narrative about what slavery was, right? Because in order for it to be abolished, it had to be painted as this most inhuman institution. So now if you've had a civil war and part of the battle was intricately connected to this ugly institution, now if you want to come together, how do you justify that? Well, you have to change your representation of what this institution was. So you get a whole class of literature. This is where the happy slaves in the South, they really wasn't doing too bad. They couldn't take care of themselves anyway. That narrative comes in, right? And so very often that's the narrative that we hear when it comes to slavery. We don't hear the stories of resistance. We don't hear the stories of fighting. We don't hear the stories of those who gave the ultimate, who committed the ultimate sacrifice in order to be free. So I think that's part of our visceral reaction oftentimes, to movies about the slave experience. But this is a different kind of film. Some have said it presents Harriet Tubman almost as a superhero. But I think it's a great movie. You've got various black characters playing different roles. You've got Harriet's continued determination to go back and get her people. And lastly, I'd say what I think is that this movie should be not the end, but a beginning. Because it certainly made me want to learn more about her and the reality of what she did. Lastly, an incredible part of the movie is her connection, the spiritual connection, the spiritual gift that she has, where she says God calls her and guides her. And she follows very clearly and very closely whatever she perceives to be the will of God. Then there's a couple times when she prays and her hands are outstretched like this, as if she's going to receive something. So it's a very powerful movie. And I think, again, there are other aspects. You can read about those aspects in the paper. You can read about those aspects in an editorial. Some of the underlying causes for opposition to the movie. But check it out for yourself and read the coverage in the final call.
Yes. Thank you. I'm going to jump to something on a lighter note and a positive note. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan with his wife, Mother Khadijah Farrakhan, and MUI and some of the Farrakhan family went to the Universal Soul Circus. And I think you went as well, not on this occasion, but you had the opportunity to go as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
This was really a great night. 3 busloads of luxury coach buses.
You say that again?
3 luxury coach buses.
Not school buses.
No. Left from Muhammad University of Islam, which is across the street from 7350 South Stony Island Avenue, the foodies. It's a foodie spot where we are now. But they went to the Universal Circus, which is, of course, the black circus. Members of Minister Farrakhan's family and his wife, Mother Khadijah, and their children and their grandchildren and some of their great-grandchildren and some of the children from our Muslim community were able to go and really enjoy a great night, you know. And I think that, you know, life is to be enjoyed. Islam is not some kind of cloistered religion where you cannot enjoy yourself. So our children were able to go, and the minister was able to go, and we were able to enjoy good, clean fun. I think the Universal Circus is such a wonderful experience. You get black acts from all over the country, all over the world, literally, and you get other acts from all over the world. So there's really a very good international flavor to it, but it also showed the minister in a different light, where he's relaxing, and I'm really glad to see. And my hope is that we can give him more of this opportunity, because certainly he has been like a father figure to me, absolutely, and really like a father figure to our community. And, you know, at 65 years, he's 85, I mean, you know, 86. I mean, at a certain point, doesn't his family have a right to be with him? But even then, while he's with his family, he brings in the extended Muslim family. This is an example of the heart of this man and his wife. And, you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So read all about that in this week's edition of The Final Call.
Yes, I'm jumping around a little bit. We had started a discussion on our brother Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And I told you to hold it, because I've been aware of up to a certain point, but I didn't know what the discussion was going on with that and begin to include Jay-Z. So can you give us a quick recap on what's going on, what happened, and what's going on now?
Well, on November 16th, brother Colin Kaepernick, former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, who has been whiteballed by the league, the NFL, for the last 3 years, meaning they have not allowed him to play. Was supposed to have this workout on Saturday. The NFL made a huge announcement. They said that all these teams would be there, but they didn't tell us some things. According to Mr. Kaepernick's agent, they didn't tell us that he was given 2 hours to accept or reject the NFL's offer. The same league that's whiteballed him for 3 years, right? The same league that didn't speak up loudly when the president called their players sons of bitches. The same league that has all these buster quarterbacks today. You know, it seems like they've gone to anybody. If you play quarterback in Pee Wee football, they'll go and grab you, but they're finding the ranks of quarterbacks has been so depleted and the crop is so inept that it's hard to say that this man is not one of the best that should be able to play at that skill position, right? So the NFL makes this whole hullabaloo. We're going to give him a shot, right? They don't tell us that they wanted him to sign a 5-page waiver, which included giving up his right to sue the league if he didn't get it, if they didn't hire him, right? They didn't tell us that media would not be allowed in to tape this workout, right? They didn't tell us that Mr. Kaepernick would not be able to tape his own workout, you know? So here was the NFL setting a scenario controlling the scenario, ultimately being able to control the narrative. But, you know, our brother ended up putting a double move on him. So about an hour before the workout was supposed to happen, he announced that he wasn't going to come to the NFL facility. He was going to do the workout at a school, and he told the NFL professionals, decision makers, where he was going to be, and invited them to meet him on his turf. Right? The public was able to see, the media was able to see, and he was able to videotape his own performance. And TMZ reported, this was on a Saturday, that he then shipped out videotape of his workout to every team in the league, right? So it was really, I think, a very masterful move on the part of this brother, who is determined. He also wore a shirt that said Kunta Kinte at the beginning of the workout. And we know that Kunta Kinte is in the book Roots, which traces or tells the story of an enslaved ancestor of the late writer Alex Haley, which it's actually been a dramatization, or it's been a movie twice. One some years ago, and it had a huge impact on the country. Mm-hmm. Then there was another version in recent years on, I think, the National Geographic Channel. Kunta Kinte is the original name of the ancestor who was enslaved. And they literally beat him until he says, "My name is Toby," because they want him to accept a new identity. So Brother Colin wearing that shirt, I mean, it just made a statement. But at the end of the day, anybody who was there knows his politics. They weren't there for his politics. And the NFL got drug addicts. They got people that beat women. They got people that have committed other crimes. They got people that engage in other activities that are not good. But yet this man, you can't tell me that they don't want him because he wore a t-shirt. No. And I'm not convinced that their offer from the beginning was legit. I think it was not legit. I think it was a game. As we said in the editorial, it was a trick play, but, you know, my man busted it up. So after this thing kind of exploded in the NFL's face, and they were shown to be, I think, liars and not dealing in good faith. Then there came, right, these anonymous reports that Jay-Z was angry at Colin Kaepernick because Colin Kaepernick didn't take advantage of this opportunity, which, again, anonymous sources earlier said Jay-Z is the one that set it up. So at the end of the day, Jay-Z has said nothing, right? There's something that came out from Rock Nation, I believe, that kind of denied any role in it. But this is, again, it comes down to some very simple things. Jay-Z is not an owner of an NFL team. He can't hire nobody. Jay-Z was hired to help the NFL with its entertainment and something to do with its social change programs and platform. He was not hired to resolve the Colin Kaepernick controversy. That problem rests solely in the hands of the white men who control and own the league. They are the ones that make decisions. So you can't try to pit two brothers against each other and it's just an anonymous source. Jay-Z, you don't even hear nothing from him. So we can't be that silly to let somebody say, well, we believe that Jay-Z said it, and now we believe Jay-Z's mad at Cap. Stop it. End of the day, the white owners hold the power. End of the day, any of those teams could have set up a time to give Colin Kaepernick a workout. Lastly, I want to say this, because some of the black sports writers have kind of been critical, but other people have been very supportive, people like LeBron James, and people that understand these same criticisms of Colin Kaepernick. He wants to be a martyr. He doesn't want to play really. He doesn't want to go along with the system. He thinks he's bigger than the league. Well, guess what? Those criticisms have been lodged against any black athlete that spoke up against the racism in this country. Any black athlete that spoke to issues of social justice, political justice, economic justice was accused of the same thing. They said the same thing about Muhammad Ali, called him un-American. They said the same thing about Jim Brown when he and others were working to increase economic strength. They said the same thing about a guy by the name of Lou Alcindor when he changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar while playing for the Milwaukee Bucks. After winning an NBA championship, they shipped this man, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who becomes one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA, and he was a dominant player then. They shipped him from Milwaukee to Los Angeles, and they basically say at that time, we don't want nobody with that name. Because he changed his name and his religion, and that was a political statement. He was also one of those who supported Muhammad Ali when Muhammad Ali refused to be drafted during the Vietnam War. The brothers at the 1968 Olympics that put on the Black Power salute, the Black Power salute and protest to point to the injustice that was being heaped on black people in America. They were sent home packing from the Olympics. They were punished for years, unable to work. So you can go on and on and on. But these people become transcendent figures. Colin Kaepernick is now more than just a man that throws balls around at the whim of white men. He's bigger than that. And so the other thing that he represents is a change in the mind of black athletes that I think the NFL doesn't like. And I would say professional sports teams owners generally don't like. Think about this. We have gone now with this brother's protest, which was against police brutality, against the innocent police killings of people, and it was a dignified protest. What did he do? He took a knee during the national anthem. He was more respectful of the national anthem than fans are in these sports arenas around the country. They don't like the fact that he had the audacity to use his fame and his platform to call the country to question about its mistreatment of us, right? They don't like that. But look at how far we've come in terms of black athletes. Nike gave Colin Kaepernick a commercial deal, right? Mm-hmm. And in that deal, in the commercial, he speaks to something about standing for what you believe. Do you remember years ago the commercial with Charles Barkley saying, "I'm not a role model"? You remember that? So you remember Michael Jordan being Silent Sam when it came to speaking about issues of injustice? So we have gone from that era where black athletes were very controlled, and then and many absolutely saying, "I don't want no responsibility for nobody but me," to now Colin Kaepernick and others taking a very, very strong stance about right and wrong, racial problems in this country. How far we've come, but that progress doesn't come without a price. Yet even paying that price and seeing Colin Kaepernick, watching a videotape of him throwing a football, I realized, man, this brother has given up something that he loves. You don't become an NFL quarterback generally without a great deal of preparation in your life, right? Because it's a skilled position. I think that I read previous articles about him, his adopted parents taking him an hour or two to quarterback camps when he was younger. So this young man is only 32 years old. He spent a tremendous amount of his life working and trying to live his dream, his personal dream of being an NFL quarterback. And he's had success. But now he is sacrificing his personal dream. And when I saw him throw that ball 40 yards, man, in the air with no sweat, I realized, wow, man, this man is making a sacrifice. But he's sacrificing for a bigger cause because he is an awake and an aware black man. The league doesn't want to deal with that. None of them. They want us to always be controlled. They want us to always be property. They always want to exercise the power of ownership. The same power that whites show in the movie Harriet. They still want us to be slaves, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan say, but they want us to be slaves in a modern context. As a matter of fact, the writer Bill Rhoden authored a book several years ago called $40 Million Slaves.
Right.
And he talked about how the NFL basically, not the NFL, the NBA, I'm not sure if it covers other sports leagues as well, but the NBA in particular locks these athletes down where they cannot say anything. We're in a new day. So if you want to be a slave, if you want to shut up and dribble and be limited to that, do that. But there's some who don't want to do that, and I think we should support them. And you can read that in my editorial this week, and also an editorial about the Harriet movie.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I want to go to a more positive note. Not that that's not positive, because it's definitely always a positive thing when you see our people willing to make a sacrifice for the liberation and the improvement of our community as a whole. And I have to push it. We had some coverage last week on Project Separation. And Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has reminded us, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has reminded us, and Student Minister Ava is now reminding us once again of the program of the Nation of Islam, and separation is the best and only solution. But with that, there's work that's going on in the community and around the world. There's an article dealing with our brother Shahid Muhammad, the math doctor, who went to the United Kingdom and was well received doing presentations on mathematics to black people. So we desire and have a desire to do better, even though that's not the picture that we always see. And along with that, there's an article in the paper from our Student Supreme Captain, Brother Mustafa Farrakhan, and he received an award for his work and presence in the community. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, this is also another, as you say, good news and inspiring story. Our brother, Captain Mustafa Farrakhan, was chosen to be among Muslims who were honored by a mosque or a masjid in the community of Imam W.D. Muhammad in New Haven, Connecticut. This story is about Brother Dalil Muhammad out of New York. But I mean, it was a great night because it was devoted to celebrating the Muslims who have had an impact. Brother Mustafa was selected as one of those people. The beautiful thing is that even though these are members of Imam W.D. Muhammad's community, we know that that community comes out of the Nation of Islam, comes out of the work and teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So this was another opportunity for us to embrace one another and reconcile and try to find ways to work together. So Brother Mustafa was among the honorees. The son of the great legendary Fruit of Islam Captain Yusuf Shah, his son Yusuf Ibn Shah was there and presented Brother Mustafa with an award. The legendary boxing promoter Murad Muhammad was there, and so we're happy to see in this day and this time the uniting of our community, our continued work to come together. So read about it. I mean, it's a beautiful story, great pictures by Brother Colin 2X out of our mosque in New York. So check it out. Enjoy some good news, and work happily and fear not, for we are the best, the righteous, and the powerful.
Yes, sir. Praise you to Allah. Of course, we didn't even touch half of what's in the paper. Is there anything else that you want to share before we close out? A lot of stuff going on. One of the things that's important about the Final Call newspaper, which I've definitely seen even more of this is that we see the positivity that's going on in our community. We can always hear about, and we should be aware of those things, the attacks that are going on in our community, but it's definitely always important that we see that our people are not only fighting back, we're fighting back with a high degree of success.
You know, one of the last things, and I think is a beautiful thing to close on, is an article by Sister Anisa Muhammad, who is one of our young up-and-coming writers. She's part of a trio of young sisters who've been working with us that I affectionately call Muhammad's Angels. But she writes about Sister Doretha Muhammad, who participated in Paris during Paris Fashion Week. And we got beautiful pictures of some of these sisters' creations. And Sister Anisa writes about that experience. So come on and read it and see what's possible when we learn who we are, when we act according to who we are, and when we find ways to work together.
Thank you, Brother Richard. Once again, we are live streaming right here on 7350 South Stony Island in Chicago, Illinois, at the Foodie Spot, right across the street from Mosque Mariam. Please come out if you're in Chicago and visit the Foodie Spot, and of course get another meal. You can get your physical edible meal right here, but you can go across the street at Mosque Mariam and be spiritually fed. And of course we have meetings on Sunday at 10 o'clock, Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. and on Friday there's a meeting as well, self-improvement, the base of community development, at 7:30. So you can always get that and find your local mosque and study group. Get your subscription to the Final Call newspaper. Get a digital edition, get a physical edition, and when you see the brothers in the street, make sure you support them as well. Until next time, behind the Final Call cover story. Peace. Assalamu alaikum.